I'm Rochelle Black, Vice President for Government and Community Relations at Oakland University and Chair of Automation Alley's Government Affairs Committee. We are very pleased and honored to welcome all of you and our special guest, United States Senator Gary Peters. It is my pleasure to move things along to welcome also Tom Kelly, the new Executive Director of Automation Alley. This is an exciting opportunity for those of us who are here and others to learn a little bit more about what's going in the world of autonomous vehicles and mobility, and we are so excited to have the Senator and Tom here today. Tom?
Thanks, Rochelle. Thank you, Senator Peters, for joining us today. We're very, very excited to have you here. Before we bring the Senator up for his remarks, and then really the most important aspect, which is the question and answer, you get a chance to have a great dialogue with the Senator. He's here today. I understand there are 2 accidents on 2 arteries getting to Troy here, so we have about 30 people that are still to get here. So forgive the inconvenience, but people will be trickling in probably for the next 10, 15 minutes as we get settled. But before we bring the Senator up, I wanted to speak a little bit about Automation Alley and our new initiative that you hopefully have read about in the press or been here to see around what we call Industry 4.0. And Industry 4.0 is really the same message. It's the other side of the coin of mobility and autonomous vehicles. Because when you think about cybersecurity and the cloud and big data and autonomous robots, all the things that are going to go into a factory are the same problems and technology that we're trying to solve that will go into the vehicle or into the vehicle to infrastructure play or how vehicles are going to communicate with each other. So when you think about what's happening, Michigan actually has to fight a double-fronted war. We have to win the fight for mobility, but we also have to win the fight to automate our factories. And we are positioned so well to win that battle. We weren't positioned so well when you competed with extremely low-skill labor, because that capital, that cost, it was so difficult. We were a very sophisticated economy and manufacturing base, and it's very difficult to compete. Well, guess what? The world is coming back to Michigan. And I want to tell you that Senator Peters has been talking about manufacturing and how we need to make things way before it was cool. Because now in the world, it is very cool to make things. It's very cool to take technology and apply it in a new way into making things. And so if you think about Industry 4.0, by the way, that was a term that came out of Germany. And the German government had said in 2012, we got a problem. We have an aging workforce. Our skill sets are difficult to come by. We're a manufacturing-based economy. How are we going to keep our standard of living up as the world evolves into this technology and we're a manufacturing-based economy? Sounds a lot like Michigan, doesn't it? And I know the Senator is very aware of this. And what they said was, we got to double down on manufacturing. Making things is the key to an improved quality of life for all our citizens. And so we took a cue from them and said, we're going to adopt that Industry 4.0 principle of all the technologies that are washing over manufacturing and dovetail them into all the technologies that are washing over mobility and autonomous vehicles and fight this double-fronted war, because we are very well positioned, Michigan, to win this fight. And so Senator Peters is going to have our support to get this done. And I know that he's been a great advocate of Automation Alley for many, many, many years. He has walked the walk for a long time when it comes to protecting our industrial base. And for that, we're extremely appreciative. So with that said, a little backstory maybe for a refresher. Senator Peters was elected to the U.S. Senate in 2014 after serving in the U.S. House of Representatives from 2009 to 2013, representing the 9th Congressional District, and later, after redistricting, the 14th Congressional District. You'll have to educate me on that because I don't understand redistricting, and probably many here don't either. That's right. Wonderful. So if you think about Senator Peters, his focus is on supporting job creation and economic growth and strengthening Michigan's small businesses. Like I said, he's always walked the walk. always with Automation Alley, been a great supporter. Currently serves on the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee, the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Committee, and the Joint Economic Committee. Thank you for joining us, Senator. Welcome.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you, Tom. Thank you for that kind introduction, and thanks to Automation Alley for having me here today. It's always a pleasure to be here, but this is something that I'm particularly passionate about, which is the future of mobility, which I'm sure all of you are as well. It's an incredibly exciting time that we live in. We have to be able to manage it properly to make sure that we fully capture all that's available, and that's why we're here today. Before I get started, though, I just want to briefly thank Ken Rogers, who recently retired here from the Alley. I don't know if he's here today, but he was certainly very involved with it. His dedication to this organization, as well as the business, was exemplary. And under his leadership, Automation Alley has grown to over 1,000 members, which is very impressive, and certainly very proud of his vision of what he did. But now we're at the next chapter, Tom, under your leadership. I look forward to working very closely with you as well, Tom, in the coming years, and putting together this forum and what we hope will be a number of other forums on this very important topic. So I'm going to start this morning with some opening remarks, kind of paint the picture as I kind of see it, and love to have your input as we go forward, and then some Q&A afterwards. And not just Q&A, also kind of your comments and vision are going to be very important. In the months and years to come, I'm going to want to continue this dialogue with you so that we're working on an ongoing basis. This is something that's going to be developing over many years, and look forward to having you come to Washington, D.C. My staff is here. I'm going to make sure you know who folks are on my team as we go forward. During the summer of 2015, I went to the floor of the United States Senate to give my first major speech, the maiden speech, which is a tradition in the Senate. And my focus was about Michigan's history in moving America forward to new frontiers of exceptionalism and opportunities as America continues to search for whatever the next big thing is. I reminded folks that it was Michigan that helped establish the right to public primary education as the cornerstone of our society, and that we continue to expand that legacy with our incredible institutions of higher learning that we have throughout our state. But ultimately, it's the mastery of manufacturing and of automation that put Michigan on the international map and helped the United States establish its industrial and military might. But computerization, as we all know, changed how we manufacture and changed the industries in significant ways. And in the age of computer, California really became kind of the king of that area. And as Tom just discussed, we are, however, in an unprecedented era of technological innovation. Only a decade ago, cars were very sophisticated and had a CD player in them. That was the extent of the sophistication in our automobiles. iPhones weren't around yet. The Internet of Things didn't even exist. No one thought about the Internet of Things. And today we have an ever more evolving ecosystem of innovation with advanced manufacturing, robotics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, connected and automated vehicles. Now we as a society, presents an incredible challenge for us, because as a society we need to figure out how to foster this very broad ecosystem that is out there so we can capitalize on all of the myriad of benefits that are associated with it, including cleaner energy, new economic growth, improved safety and health, and greater accessibility for the elderly and for disabled populations as well. So today we're here to talk about cars of the future. Computers and cars have merged together, and I think it's really pretty striking when you think that certain high-end vehicles on the market today, these are vehicles that are on the market today, have more than 100 million lines of code in an individual vehicle. To put that in perspective, that's nearly 5 times the lines of code in an F-35 fighter jet, and nearly 10 times that of an Android mobile device operating system. It's even more astounding when you think that there are 60 million lines of code in all of Facebook. So an automobile has more lines of code than some of these incredible machines and applications that we have. I just got back from California. In fact, I was in California just last week in Silicon Valley. where I met with a tech company that told me that their GPUs, their graphic processing units that they're now developing for autonomous vehicles, goes through 24 trillion, that's with a T, 24 trillion calculations per second. That's mind-blowing, 24 trillion calculations per second. So here in Southeast Michigan, we're competing to create the future. And as Tom mentioned, we have some very clear advantages, I believe. One thing folks are learning is that making automobiles is not an easy business. And just last week, it was reported that Apple is abandoning its efforts to build its own car and will focus its efforts on building an autonomous driving software. The West Coast is learning that it's not easy to make a machine that can drive safely down the road at 65 miles an hour with your family in all sorts of weather. I also visited the folks at Uber in California last week, and they also said that their executives went through some of our auto factories here in Michigan, and they walked out of there and said, whoa, we don't want to do that. Yeah, that's pretty complicated business. There are other folks that can do that really well. We'll let those other folks do that, and then we'll focus on our vision. And we know that. We know here in Michigan, we know what that's all about. But now the race is going to be on to see who can make cars that are moving 65 miles an hour or more, I suppose, depending on the highway. Don't break the law. And have it at the same time as they're going that speed, drive themselves, talk to each other, and talk to the infrastructure, know where pedestrians are, motorcyclists and bicycles, while also delivering passengers safely to their destination. But will this change be a disruption? A lot of folks talk about this as the disruption in the auto industry, or will it result in Michigan leading a transformation of the auto industry? To me, that's really the crux of what we're here to talk about. From Wall Street to Silicon Valley to Washington, there are people and businesses that see the auto industry as ripe for disruption. That's what they talk about. But to me, disruption is only the correct adjective if you are basically a bystander. It is change that is happening to you and around you. That is disruptive. But when you're affecting the change, and our own industry is the one leading it, then that is transformational. And I think that's what Michigan stands on the brink of. A transformation of the auto industry that will lead to, and we will control, and the destiny and fortunes of our state will be basically in our control. Last week, the Detroit Free Press reported that in the past 6 months, 2/3 of all self-driving auto-related jobs are based in the Bay area of San Francisco area. Of the 350 job listings, only 15 are located in Michigan. Companies like Google, Bosch, Uber, and Zoox, a little-known company valued at $1 billion, will be attempting to rival Tesla. And all are seeking to hire top talent with computer science skills to give them that competitive edge. And they are also working to develop and train this talent as we speak at an accelerating level. While I was in California, I saw something that really struck me that I was not happy about. And that was a huge billboard on the highway that said, autonomous vehicle engineers, free training, online training, come to the online training at Udacity, which is a for-profit education organization that was started by Stanford grads, and it now offers nano degrees in artificial intelligence and certificates in automated vehicle technologies. So they are not just pushing this, they are advertising it on huge billboards. I said, I have not seen a billboard advertising autonomous vehicle engineers on I-75 when you get around the cones there. I haven't seen any of that happening here in our area, and yet you're seeing it in California. That gives an idea of what we're competing against, that they get this, and they're working very rapidly to develop the capacity to be a leader in it. And I think these facts are proof of the work that we need to change other people's minds too around the country about what happens here in Michigan. The incredible talent that we have at Michigan universities, but our need to retain those folks. I also, as I was in Silicon Valley, I was surprised at how many University of Michigan graduates that I met. But they're in California. They're not here in Michigan, even though they're graduating from Ann Arbor as well as some of our other universities. We got to change that. We also need to do more to recruit those from outside our region that are otherwise drawn to Silicon Valley or Pittsburgh or Austin and Chicago. Michigan companies need to show prospective hires that they can tackle interesting and incredibly revolutionary challenges that will define the future of transportation and tech right here in Michigan, where their compensation packages can also go a whole lot further than they can in California, where you can buy a home here for about a fifth the cost. That should be an advantage for folks as well. We need to establish that if they're doing the work here in Michigan, then if they're not doing it here, then they're basically missing out. They're missing out on what is really happening around the world. So that's why I'm so pleased to join all of you here today, because of your companies and your organizations. You're basically in the driver's seat. We have the opportunity to, as I mentioned, to drive this technological transformation, but we are, no questions about it, in a fierce national and international competition to be the industrial, intellectual, and academic leader when it comes to connected and autonomous vehicles. Henry Ford's adaptation of the assembly line was probably one of the original disruptive technologies, and few American innovations have really changed the modern world as much as automobiles. But just as they changed the country, cars have also changed Michigan, bringing us industrial power and wealth. Leading in the future of connected and autonomous vehicles gives us a chance to build a new strong position in the economy to come. Because, and I think Tom mentioned this, because self-driving cars should not be viewed as the end goal. They are the beginning of building a whole new technological landscape in our region in so many ways. In fact, it was described to me by one of those tech companies when I was in California, that when you look at autonomous vehicles and the tremendous challenges that are associated with overcoming all of the technological hurdles of driving that car down the road at 65 miles an hour, that it really should be viewed as the moonshot of artificial intelligence. That if you can do that, if you can have these cars be self-driving vehicles, you will unlock so many other areas. You will advance artificial intelligence from the manufacturing space to just about everything that your imagination can imagine now and things that we simply can't imagine now. So whoever is going to break forward in autonomous vehicles, that will be the leader for the economy probably for the next century. So this is more than just the auto industry that we have at stake. As important as that is about who we are, our culture, and our legacy, if that is located here in Michigan, and I believe we can do that, and we will, and that's part of why we're here today and going to continue to work, we will be able to lead the transformation. But in order to do that, we're going to have to promote partnerships between industry, government, academic units. Not only have they been the backbone for our current, past, and present accomplishments, they're going to be even more critical in this really fast-moving world. Many groups are coming together here in Michigan to work towards a common goal of bringing self-driving cars to our roads. We're already reaping the benefits, I believe, of this collaborative work with the M-City testing facility that is located in Ann Arbor. And soon, advanced research will take place on a much broader scale, and I think this is absolutely critical for our state and for the country, and that's at the American Center for Mobility in Ypsilanti, where hopefully, very shortly, we'll be testing, validating, and certifying the vehicles that will be driving America in the coming decades. I'm very excited about the possibilities of ACM offers to all of these stakeholders, and I've been very involved in ACM since its conception. And I recently had the pleasure of bringing some major players to the mobility space from Washington, D.C. to visit both M-City as well as to go to the kind of the vision of what was happening in the Ypsilanti Center. I had the Department of Transportation Secretary Anthony Fox, I had NHTSA Administrator Rosekind, Deputy Director for the National Economic Council, Jason Miller, and I'll tell you, all of them were incredibly impressed with what they saw here in Michigan, impressed with M-City and impressed with this vision of the Mobility Center. So we're in the process right now of, and we've been doing a lot of pushing, a whole lot of pushing for the administration to have a competition to see where will the national testing facility be located. We're expecting very shortly that competition will be announced, and we're also very confident we're going to be able to win that, given all of the advantages that we have, which we can talk about later. And I think that's essential, because wherever that center is going to be, where everybody comes together to test, you're going to have engineering, you're going to have manufacturing, everything will be around that center. As you know, this is a different business model from a test track than in the past, where every company had their own test track and tested their models and tried to have a competitive advantage as a result of that. But when you have connected vehicles, everybody has to talk to each other. A Toyota has to talk to a Ford car, and a Ford car has to talk to a GM and a Nissan, and so they all have to be in the exact same spot. And having that facility will bring that autonomous testing and features together. I also have a vision that we can move beyond vehicles there, and also it's an airport, as you know, Willow Run, and the former Arsenal democracy. But when you're looking at automated flying vehicles as well, same thing, have to operate in the space, also the same autonomous. We could be a leader when it comes to aerospace as well. Again, fostering and nurturing that artificial intelligence epicenter, which we have the potential of being here in Michigan. But in order to succeed, we can't ever lose sight of the fact that this is about more than just our economic success as a region. It's also about people's lives, and I think this is the most important thing, and folks out there and the general public need to be very aware that it is about safety. Just last year, over 35,000 people died in motor vehicle crashes. We saw the largest annual percentage rise in deaths on our roads in the past 50 years, just last year. And connected and automated vehicle technologies have the potential to drastically reduce the statistic. Research suggests that up to 94% of vehicle accidents are the result of human error. And with safe deployment, automated technologies can significantly decrease the number and help our loved ones, friends, and neighbors arrive safely. And as a father of some recent teenage drivers, that's a big deal, obviously, for all of us who worry about that. We also need better access to transportation, reduced congestion, more energy efficiencies. We're seeing a lot of this progress already, and I know there's a lot more that we can do ahead of us as well. That's why I'm really pleased that the federal government has been fully engaged in the future of mobility. Last month, I'm sure many of you saw that the Department of Transportation released its groundbreaking federal automated vehicle policy after considerable work. This marks, I think, a major milestone in the effort to bring driverless cars to America's roads and ensure that our country remains the world leader in this next generation transportation. So I'm going to take a few moments to just talk about this and about the role of government and innovators like all of you that are going to be playing as we work together on this. The federal policy contains 4 key components. The first outlines a 15-point safety assessment for the safe design, development, testing, and deployment of highly automated vehicles. This is a meaningful first step to provide federal vehicle guidelines for manufacturers, something they've been asking for some time and are now pleased is available for them to work. The Department of Transportation has indicated that the safety assessment will likely become a mandatory requirement for manufacturers, and they'll be working with the industry to iron out some of the parameters of these safety requirements over time. It's important to get this right, and approaching this assessment as a living document that's going to evolve ensures that we can adapt very quickly to what's going to be a very changing technological environment in the years ahead. The second component outlines the distinct federal and state roles for regulation of automated vehicles, moving us towards what was hopefully, in my mind, a uniform national framework for regulation in this space. The federal government will have the lead role in regulating performance of highly automated vehicles, while states will retain responsibilities for vehicle licensing, registration, traffic laws, and enforcement, as well as insurance and liability claims. Michigan has traditionally led the country in taking very proactive steps by introducing a number of bills at the state level that will get automated vehicles and trucks on the road. And I certainly applaud, we've seen some efforts recently by our state legislature to do that, and those are extremely positive developments. But as all of this is going, we also know that consumers aren't necessarily sold on the benefits of autonomous vehicles. We're going to have to do our work to educate folks as well as to what these vehicles involve and ensure a safe operation of them. Third, the policy makes a federal commitment to expedite the safe introduction of automated vehicles into the marketplace. The Department of Transportation will streamline a number of procedures to be more responsive to consumers and manufacturers with a number of time-saving and accelerated approvals, which we have to have, and I will continue to work to shorten that time as much as possible. And finally, the policy presents a number of, I think, novel considerations that Congress should closely examine. This would include new tools and authorities that the Department of Transportation might need in the future of automated vehicle technology as we begin to deploy this on a wider scale. Many of our, as you know, our existing motor vehicle laws and regulations were developed decades ago, and they are all contingent on an actual human being being behind the wheel. So it's a very different framework of thinking about this. Particularly when you consider the most advanced onboard electronics that we had, as I mentioned before, CD players and trucks, they would have radios. Now we have 70 computer systems in these cars as well. A completely different kind of framework, and government has to adapt to that as well. So we're going to have to revisit our approaches, adapt our policies, and we have to take care not to stifle this innovation. The worst thing we can possibly do is stifle innovation where we have no idea where it's going to turn and go. But still make sure we're setting the highest standards and goals for manufacturing, for engineering, for security, right at the outset. As I mentioned about consumer acceptance, this is where I'm very concerned, is that we basically have one shot to get these right. The public is already a little concerned about this. Folks who kind of like to drive their car and don't want to turn that over to a computer. I'm a motorcyclist. I definitely don't want to driving a motorcycle over that, so that's not going to happen. I'm going to squash that if I can. But people are going to be real careful, really cautious about that. And you can imagine if you had we've had some accidents, but if you have a high-profile accident, something goes wrong with autonomous vehicles, you'll set the whole industry back considerable distance. So we have to be very careful. The stakes are high, and to use a NASA term, failure is not an option when it comes to getting this technology right out of the box. So I would encourage as you leave today, and again, this is about working together with you for the years ahead, to review this policy, reach out to my staff in Michigan as well as in Washington. Share your perspectives, submit your review. Right now there's an open comment period on these policies that go through November 22nd. So if we could work with you prior to that, that would be extremely helpful. The realization of these policies are going to be absolutely dependent on public feedback. And all of you are working in this space every day. You have incredibly valuable insights on how to make the future of this mobility a reality. Success depends on your collaboration, and I need to hear from you. I can be your advocate, we can work together, but I need to hear from you, so please contact us and let's work on a regular basis. Now, we realize there are still plenty of unknowns when it comes to highly automated and self-driving vehicles. And as a member of the Senate Commerce Committee, and I'm the co-founder of a bipartisan Senate Smart Transportation Caucus, I'm committed to working on these issues. But we also need to have discussions right here in Michigan. And we need to bring everyone together to understand the possibilities and the challenges that lead to this transformation. So I want to take a few moments just to highlight 3 areas where I think Michigan can lead the way, and we must. Cybersecurity, infrastructure, and workforce recruitment and economic development in one. First, we've all seen the news reports about the potential for hackers to interfere with onboard vehicle systems. And with our cars and trucks using so much hardware and software, the potential rises for vulnerability exponentially. Cybersecurity and privacy must be thoughtful and foundational tenets of innovation in this era of mobility. As I mentioned before with the crash, but when you think about cyber attacks, and I believe as a member of the Homeland Security Committee, in addition to my work on transportation, it's without question the number one national security threat that we face as a country are cyber attacks, and not just from hackers, but from incredibly sophisticated state actors, as we are seeing now in the newspapers with the Russians and others that are actively engaged in cyber. And when you think about vehicle-to-vehicle technology and cars, the vulnerabilities there, it brings it to a whole new level. As I've often said, if someone hacks into your bank account and steals your money, that's really a bad thing. You're really unhappy. If someone hacks into your car and drives you into a wall, that's existential. So that's beyond not being happy. We have to make sure that we're integrating this right into the very design of where we go forward. It also means some policies at the federal level to strengthen what we do with cybersecurity, which we can talk about. Second, automated vehicles have a greater chance of success when they're paired with consistent and as well as modern infrastructure. So we need to partner with our local and both locally and nationally to make sure our roads, signals, and lights and all of the computerization that goes on our roads can support the introduction of these new cars. I'm particularly pleased about Michigan's Department of Transportation here locally at the state. They've done a really good job of preparing our roads for the next era of mobility. And in my own personal work on this area, last year I sponsored legislation that was that was signed into law as part of the comprehensive 5-year highway bill that allows states to utilize existing federal funds to put in the sensors and technology. In the past, federal money could only be used for concrete and steel and all the normal ways of building a road. Now federal money can be used to also embed right in the road beds the kinds of sensors that are going to allow these technologies to be fully utilized, and hopefully we will see that as we go forward with our construction here in Michigan. We also need to invest in smart city initiatives, which will offer just unprecedented opportunities to bring transportation to underserved communities, to improve traffic conditions and reduce motor vehicle accidents and fatalities. We lost this first round. Smart City went somewhere else. I think it's critical. We're going to work very closely to hopefully have a city in Michigan to be designated as a smart city where we can integrate it. It makes even more sense if we have a national testing facility at Ypsilanti than to also be able to take those vehicles out into a smart city and use it with our roads and cities here. We know that technological innovation impacts economies of all size, so it's not just major cities, but small towns as well. Michigan, as we all know, is home to many of the finest colleges and universities in this country. Highly automated cars offers incredible technological and research opportunities, and we want to continue that development here in the state, and that's why we need to make sure we're attracting top innovators here. So in the coming weeks, I'm going to be back here at Automation Alley and to host a series of roundtables, which I hope you come back after this. Hopefully that you would want to come back on these topics. And we're going to use these opportunities to talk in depth, to really drill down into this, about promoting innovation, addressing the regulatory and policy gaps that exist right now to prevent us from doing some of this, and building our community partnerships here. I want our experts to build a dialogue around the future of mobility. And I can't think of any place better to do this than here with Tom Kelly and Automation Alley, so thank you for hosting these series of workshops that are coming up. I think these conversations are just critically important because I have to hear from you, as I mentioned before, and part of us to make sure that we are going to be the center of mobility in the country is not just having the technological expertise and some of the education. We also have to show that this is a region that truly collaborates, brings everybody together, and that gives us a distinct competitive advantage to make sure that we are going to be here to get the kinds of research necessary. So in order to succeed, we're going to have to recruit, retain talent, as I mentioned, and put together a well-integrated ecosystem. And that means our universities, so I'm happy Rochelle's here with Oakland University, bringing our universities into the fold as well. It's more than ever. It's always been an important aspect, but given what we have. So, in closing, we have just an incredible, rich history in Michigan. The talent that's in this room is phenomenal when it comes to the ability to really have transformative technology. My challenge as a policymaker is that we all know that in making policy sometimes is, let's face it, pretty slow going. I work in a body that was designed to be slow, the United States Senate. They call it the great deliberative body. That means we work very slowly to move forward, and we can't. I mean, the limiting factor on this technology could very well be public policy that just has a hard time catching up and keeping up. It's hard enough for all of the great engineers and scientists to keep up with what's happening. We've got to make sure our policies are aligned with that as well. Going back, we have to get this right. We have to get it right from the get-go. Plus, my focus is we got to make sure that the center of the universe is Michigan, and that we are the center of the universe not just for advanced vehicles, but we're going to be the center for artificial intelligence and for advanced manufacturing that brings all of that in 3D printing and command of the Internet of Things. And I have no question in my mind that we can do it, we will do it, but we got to get to work on it. So thank you for being here and look forward to working with you.